All right. And we are live. Let me just double check. I've been telling them I don't know if I'm doing any of this right. So we're going to double check and make sure that I'm good to go. Yes, looks like we're good. But yeah, welcome in. Welcome into a like a ninja stream. We have a few guests on today that are going to talk about automation and how you can use N8N and other automation tools like a ninja. But before we get started, I want to kind of have everybody on here introduce themselves, talk to us a little bit about what they do and how they are currently using automation. So, David, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I'm David Spoonar. I am the owner and CEO of Servant 42, an MSP in Central Indiana. And although I've been PowerShell scripting for heavily for a few years, and probably going back 20 years or more when I started, and really enjoy it, I tried N8N a couple of years ago after getting frustrated by not knowing JavaScript or the expression syntax and stuff. I kind of gave up on it for a while, and then came back earlier this year. With AI assistance in writing some of that stuff and learning a little bit more since then, and I've been kind of going gangbusters internally. So I'm, doing more N8N stuff, and it's really cool. So I'm happy to be here and get into some of the fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on. You're a big part of the community, so really appreciate everything you do. Andreas.
Hi.
Hopefully I'm saying
Yes,
that correctly, but do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course, I'm sorry if it's a little bit hollow here. My furniture just literally arrived like 2 minutes ago. My name is Andreas. I'm a local IT company in the Netherlands. My name is de IT-afdeling, which actually translates to the IT department, but then locally in Dutch. I've been doing a lot of IT operational things like networking, desktop management for local companies. And since basically rediscovering N8N, just like David, it spurred me to actually start looking at processes, not only internally, but also as a web app application builder. And that's what I've been doing mostly with N8N.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much. And then last but not least, Kevin, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So Kevin Landers, president over at RocketWise. We're over in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. And David was so kind as to throw me under a bus and tell somebody that I knew something about N8. And I guess we'll see if David's a liar or not here in live. Yeah, I've been probably coding longer than I really want to admit, but have started heavily using some automation platforms within our MSP over the last several years, and didn't really use N8 until recently, where we had an automation platform that lacked some functionality, and so we had to find something to bridge the gap. And so N8 landed across our desk, and have been spending many a day in Discord chatting with David and discovering what we can do with it. So.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like we got a lot of good experience here. So before we kind of jump into some of the potential use cases, I wanted to start off with kind of an intro to N8N as a platform. Can y'all kind of explain to me what exactly it is and how you are using it at a high level? Just kind of those basic use cases.
Are you picking who goes first, or are we picking?
Sorry. Whoever wants to just jump in. I don't want to put anybody on the spot specifically, but yeah, whoever wants to jump in.
Sure.
I'm checking out to see if I can reduce my echo a little bit.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah. So I started using N8N initially because I needed to integrate our VoIP platform, which is based on NetSapiens software, into a third-party, white labeled, mobile application that we have from a company called Ringotel. So the two of those, I needed to be able to do a couple of things. One, pull the information together from for activations and add a button in our NetSapiens console that then allows people to see the status of whether they have the mobile app activated or not, and to then activate it and do password resets and so forth. And then also to do single sign-on, so people could use their VoIP credentials to sign into the mobile app. And N8N was able to do both of those things by tying them together. There's, in a lot of ways, it's like Zapier. So that's probably the most popular thing out there. It's just a workflow engine that lets you run receive webhook calls, make API calls out to third-party services, and then pull that data together centrally, do things with it, and then either transfer it or operate on it with other services, send emails, write to databases, make AI calls, talk to AI, get answers back. So from a high level, that's kind of what started me using on it, and then started me using it again, and from a purpose standpoint. But that's generally, I'm like, there's a lot of things that can be done with this tool because it's open source. They do have a hosted version, but if you run it yourself in a on your own machine or a cloud virtual machine, you can add additional modules to it called community modules that many people have written for existing systems that they don't support automatically. So the Autotask, for example, or Ninja One, or there's several other tools that they don't integrate with unless you add the module, and then you can more easily access things and write graphical workflows to handle that data. You can also use direct HTTP API calls. If you know how to do REST API queries, you can do as much as you want with those queries directly in N8N. So it kind of caters to everything from the really simple and easy to use built-in or add-on modules, all the way up to get as advanced as you want and customize third-party services.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Kevin, are you kind of using it in the same way? Would you kind of agree that those are some of those use cases?
Yeah, we are. In fact, David and I worked together on the aforementioned code for Ringotel. So being able to run into issues where you have in our case, with NetSapiens, having a portal where I did not want my staff to have to go in and manually create extensions or activate extensions in a VoIP software platform like Ringotel, and being able to set up automated workflows that would run on a schedule that would create those extensions from NetSapiens to the other platform, but also being able to do custom JavaScript so that suddenly there was a button on a user profile screen that you could just basically click to say enable this user to use the VoIP phone, soft phone. And so being able to allow our end users and or our technicians to be able to click a button instead of going and clicking a lot of different places to do things manually. So yeah, again, it's like David said, Zapier probably, or Zapier, who knows how to say it. I don't even know how to say N8N. I'm guessing that's what we call it.
I think it's N8N. I looked it up once. It is it's not like it there's a word that they definitely, the creator calls it N8N, like the words, the letters, and the numbers spelled out. So it's annoying. It's difficult to say. I don't like that it's N8N because it's hard to say those things together, but it is apparently the official way to do it.
Yeah. I looked up so many videos before I started this because I was like, how do I say it? Is it N8N? Is it Nate or something? I don't know. So yeah,
it's like automation kind of H, and like there's something. I read the origin story and I totally forgot it. So it's online. Somebody can look it up if you're curious.
Okay.
Go Google like how did N8M get named.
Good to know.
Appreciate the fact they didn't call it automate. So yeah, there's that.
Andreas, how about you?
Yes, let's see if my echo is a little bit fixed now, because I tried to go to my headset instead, better noise cancelling, hopefully. I'm honestly mostly used N8N to optimize my internal processes, and I started just at my biggest bottlenecks and started working from there. One of my biggest bottlenecks is invoicing. which I basically, with N8N, I can have the flow show you that one at least later if you like, where I get an email with an invoice and then I just get an automated response from N8N, like what do I need to do with it? I click the response that it needs to do and then it will process it accordingly. It goes automatically into my CRM, it goes automatically to my bookkeeper, everything gets updated, and on top of that I got the analytics that I get for free on top of it. And that's something that I've been doing with each of my processes. So buying computer hardware is, I have an AI workflow where I can just talk to it like, I need something, go find me it. It will use web search, it will find the right suppliers, even internationally, because I have a lot of customers across the globe. And that all ties it together for me to just save time. And that for me is the core of N8N, is just saving time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these automation tools are really, really almost necessary now for like saving time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to jump off of that too and talk a little bit about the fact that there are a lot of different automation tools out there. And so when it comes to deciding on an automation tool that you want to invest in, what are some of those things that you look for? Is it pricing? Is it specific features? Is it a roadmap? Things like that. What sets certain automation tools apart? And this is an open question for anyone.
To me, honestly, where N8N falls is the core capabilities are still visual and easy to understand, where you do have the capability of going very deep and entering your own code to exactly let it do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other automation tools like Zapier or Make.com already have a good template direction to start off from, but they don't allow you to go deeper and manipulate it yourself. And the one thing that triggered N8N to boom in success is the AI capabilities. That you have an AI agent integrated that also works with things like MCP. And that combination is just not seen yet in the other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, we started with Zapier a long ago. Reasons we ended up moving away from Zapier. So to be clear, we also use Roost. So we actively use that as well as N8N. Again, N8N, we kind of got into that because there were a couple of things we needed Roost to do that it just simply didn't do at the time. I don't think it still does. And that was more around file handling and actually processing binary files. But that said, we moved from Zapier to Roost because of the fact that, you know, as an MSP and the technology stacks that we use, Roost was, you know, we got in pretty early. So they had built out a lot of core functionality, especially around Microsoft 365, Azure, and so forth. And they had some things that were, you know, already built out, but they were willing to also customize for us and so forth. And quite honestly, where we were at with Zapier, it was getting insanely priced. You know, as far as what the cost was and the value we're getting out of it. So the first thing that we did was actually replicate everything that we were doing in Zapier with Roost, and then began to leverage all their, you know, the onboarding, offboarding of folks for clients, or, you know, even onboarding a client in itself. So anyway, so I guess to answer your question, I mean, obviously price is one. It has to be priced in such a way that it's not going to go astronomical, and you know, the price outweighs what we're getting out of it. But it's also going to be something that we can grow with. Hopefully, there's a strong community around. Roost has their own Discord channel. N8N has a Discord channel. They both, you know, have a solid amount of documentation. And, you know, but then at the same time, Zapier's got a lot of documentation out there, both what they've written and then other people that have posted blogs. So, so I think it comes down to, what does your team know, or what are you willing to invest in your team learning? And, you know, what has the most functionality is going to match what your needs are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I think the open source piece here was really nice because it was so flexible. There's no like the minimum, even to run in a cloud server, the cloud server I can run N8N on reliably at about $15 a month, which is ridiculously inexpensive. Obviously, that involves some deployment and server administration know-how to get there. And I've automated some of that as well outside of N8N to get to N8N. And the flexibility, the user interface, it's not perfect, but it is really flexible and easy to use. It is generally very fast and efficient. There's a lot of ability to customize it with your own JavaScript or custom expressions. The actual interface, you expect to be able to do something, you just click and it's like, oh, it's already here. The feature's here. I didn't realize I needed to be able to do this. You can copy and paste. Everything in N8N is actually represented by JSON under the hood. So it's literally just JSON text files that are actually turned into the workflow nodes. And you can simply highlight one or more nodes on the workflow engine template and copy. And you can paste that in a text editor, and it pastes the actual contents of how that workflow is built visually into text format. You can export it to a JSON file very easily. You can copy and paste between workflows. Oh, I want these 3 nodes. I'm going to copy them and paste them into the workflow. You can, on the N8N community and some places online, you can actually publish workflows that have a live preview in their, inside of the web browser, where you can see the workflow that somebody else is sharing visually. Even open it and edit it and look at some of the things and then copy and paste those directly into your own workflows. So they've simplified a lot of the workflow process around workflows in addition to the actual workflows themselves. And they do restrict the open source version from a few things like single sign-on and some multiple user features. And they have an enterprise version that they sell, and there's a few restrictions on the use of the product. Like you can't clone them with their own product in a couple of ways. But they really don't gatekeep a lot of features behind a price paywall. That you can, there's no limits to the services you can connect to the customization you can add yourself. You can use all the features like integrating with AI, webhooks, forms, unlimited integrations. You can write your own nodes and your own integrations. I've gotten close to trying that. I haven't succeeded at any of that yet, but there are people who have taken open API specs, which is the common way to share how an API for a service works. And a lot of vendors provide an open API formatted file of like, here's how to access our stuff. And with some basic instructions and a little bit more JavaScript knowledge than I have, you can turn that open API into a basic node integration that makes it easy to access that system from N8N. And that's what the community modules are in many cases, where there's somebody that's gone to the effort of making that and started to build up some of the MSP tools that N8N doesn't necessarily have built in, which is a benefit to services like Zapier and some of the others that have a few more tools, in some cases pre-run. Roost obviously has way more because that's their focus is MSP tools, and so their team builds those things heavily. And I can see that's a big benefit of the Roost side of things. PIA, I think, has some similarities there as well with what they integrate with MSP wise. But N8N is starting to build a community of MSPs that are building up access to MSP tools from inside of the N8N system, and it's just really been easy to use and pick up. And when I get frustrated, usually, fortunately, AI is there to pick up some of the pieces, and I don't have to go stumble over it for hours and hours. I know in the chat somebody mentioned the MCP, which I think Model Context Protocol is what that acronym means. It's basically a way to give AI a way to talk to a specific service and both get information and control that service via kind of an automated API integration. I have not actually had a chance to experiment with MCP and much AI from an automation standpoint. I use it to write code and write N8N and syntax, but I don't actually integrate. I do have one single chat. I've connected N8N to Azure Cloud AI services and can chat with it, but I've not actually run data through it yet. It's on my to-do list. So I haven't run out of other stuff to do yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I in chat, Crockett, hopefully I said that correctly, actually did ask, anyone ever use the MCP server for Ninja together with N8N? Does anybody here have experience with that? No? Okay. Well, hopefully, Crockett, we will. Maybe you could give us some insight on how to do that.
Next stream.
Yes, yes. Next stream we'll have you on. Thank you so much for volunteering. Really appreciate it. Yeah, Kevin, I wanted to ask you. So you're using Roost, and I'm assuming that all of y'all are using multiple automation platforms. How do they work together to kind of make things better?
Well, I guess in my case, they do work together, right? So we have a client that actually hired us to, oddly enough, to write an integration between one of their customers' systems and their own system. And so we were able to do so by feeding everything. We started with Roost. Again, that was a platform we've leveraged for quite a bit of stuff. So we leveraged Roost for some of the back end processing of that integration for them. And so we were able to gather information out of their client system, start basically processing it within Roost. But they actually needed a PDF document generated and uploaded into their system on the other end. So at the time, Roost had no capability of doing that, and so we basically have a point in a workflow where Roost hits a webhook that is a trigger on the N8N side, and N8N takes the information and actually does the PDF generation and whatnot, and then passes it off to the system where it needs to go. It was kind of, in hindsight, it's a little bit janky in that we could have technically gone and started from N8N and done the whole process there. But at the time, we started with Roost, and that's where we ended up. And so technically, as David, alluded to earlier with webhooks and being able to do custom web request, you can tie any of these systems together as long as you have an understanding of how to call a webhook and how to set up a webhook to listen and respond to the other side. So does that answer your question, or are you looking for something different?
Yeah, no, I think that was great. And I wanted to talk specifically about N8N now. So if someone were to if someone is looking to adopt this tool, how would you suggest they get started? What are some of those initial things that you would recommend? This is a question for everyone too.
I can explain how I started, and then perhaps somebody can use that, because I believe there's many ways to start N8N, because you can start out with your own code and then work towards more modular visual parts, or the other way around. For me, I learned a lot from templates and from YouTube videos to understand how N8N itself functioned, to understand which nodes do what and how do I achieve specific tasks within N8N before actually going after the whole workflow. And that learning curve was, because there's so much information available, if you have the time to absorb that all, that builds you into your own structure. Like, okay, now I want to, instead of doing this from random cloud service that I saw on YouTube, now I'm going to take this from my own Postgres database. Let's connect that. And then the parts all of a sudden start to fit, and you start to remodulize your whole workflow according to your business process. And that's how I learned N8N mostly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely a big proponent of YouTube videos and just watching other people using the product.
Yeah, YouTube has a lot of videos out there for N8N. There are creators. I'd say it's heavily weighted toward the AI side of things, because that's kind of where N8N's exploded in popularity recently, is people using it for AI workflows. And there's a lot of people using it for things that most of us in IT would not be super happy with, like marketing and scammer people that are using it to run AI workflow, post a bunch of marketing garbage blog posts that, they're like, oh yeah, we run N8N to go suck a bunch of articles, and, we want to write about these topics. Let's go out to the internet, pull a bunch of topics in, create a bunch of blog posts from those, push them to a WordPress blog automatically, and schedule them to go out once a day. And ta-da, we now have a blog engine that drives traffic to our stuff. That absolutely happens out there. There's a ton of that out there. And there's a lot of YouTube videos of how to do that.
Yeah.
The actual practical how to use N8N to do that, some of that stuff is really cool. Like you can reuse that for all sorts of good stuff as well. I mean, it's cool that you can do that. Obviously, we know people are doing that with AI today all over the place. N8N just happens to be a tool that they're using to do it because it's good at AI. But there's all sorts of stuff from a starting point. I ended up hand installing the N8N on a virtual server initially, but I've switched to using Ansible, which is a package that you can run on your own computer or a server that basically reaches out with SSH, and it's kind of a desired state configuration system where you define in configuration files how you want your server to look event at the end, and then the Ansible runs through and does all those things. So in my case, I have this is public on my GitHub page. There's an Ansible playbooks repository with some examples. You edit some YML files to put your host name and so forth in. And then in my case, I'm using Alma Linux as the foundation and putting Caddy, the Caddy web server, which is an open source web server that can proxy a lot of like Docker containers and stuff easily for front-end access and add SSL certificates with Let's Encrypt. And then it deploys N8N with a similar Docker container type system. So you end up with a server that runs both N8N itself and then Caddy in front of it to make it web accessible. And then it deploys that right to the point where you can go in and log in, create your N8N credentials, and start playing on your own server. So I create a server in Vultr for us, but there's a few other web hosts, any Linux, Linux. In this case, Alma Linux, just because that's what Ansible is designed for. But you could automate pretty much any other Linux system. It goes in, enables automatic updates the system, and then deploys N8N and Caddy, turns them to auto update, enables them. You just point an IP address, of a subdomain to your VPS, run Ansible against it with SSH credentials, come back in a little while and magically log in, and you've got it up and running. And I automated that because I wanted to be able to spin up a replacement or a test box or go to additional systems and be, because once we rely on this for critical parts of the business, it needs to be recoverable. How do we get back to this state is up and running again? Hey, all these the server died, or the hosting provider had a problem, or that virtual machine crashed or got corrupt, or an update failed. How do we get back to functional again? It's part of the backup and recovery triad. So in my case, I'm automating creating the N8N setup and getting that up and running. And from there, I have a workflow that I found from the GitHub, the N8N community, to back up workflows to GitHub. So I have a workflow in N8N that's tied to a GitHub repository that I, once a day, or when I press the button, it backs up any changes from the last backup to GitHub, those JSON files again of all those workflows that I could easily pull out and recreate if I needed to pull them back or move them to a new system. So that's where we are. There's a lot of other ways to do it because it is open source. It is very flexible. There's a lot of things you can do. But yeah, just depends. You can use the N8N.io. They have a cloud hosted platform. It starts at about $20 a month. It's not very expensive. There's higher plans. The downside to the cloud platform is you don't get the level of customization with community modules and things that are that you can install and run. So you lose some of that power. And you're also limited in some of the the quantities of workflows and the number of executions that if you're running it on your own hardware, you can simply upgrade the hardware and run millions of executions if you want to for very little money. So the cloud hosted version sounds amazing. I even hear that the cloud version, which I've not signed up for even, has AI built into it. So if you're paying for the cloud subscription, you can actually ask their own AI to help build workflows in the cloud environment. And I'm honestly tempted to do that. I might still do that. Even if I pay the money, build stuff in the cloud platform, and then copy it to my own server to run regularly, then I at least get the integrated AI, and I don't need to use my separate AI tool to build stuff and copy back and forth. So it might improve the speed of development there. So there's some interesting puzzle pieces to fit together.
I actually do have it running in the cloud, and one of the limitations is executions. I accidentally set one of my executions to execute every minute, and all of a sudden, like 3 days later, it was gone. So I had to upgrade for a month to get enough executions to keep my ball rolling. But I fixed that by then. But generally speaking, if you're building more internal tools, you really don't reach the executions. 10,000 executions is still a lot more than you can push per hour, generally speaking. The pro is you can ask the AI assistant if you are just coding, you're making the workflow and it doesn't run. You can ask to see if the AI assistant understands where your problem is and suggest improvements or other nodes to resolve it. And the one thing that I personally like about the cloud is that you have projects and the user management. But that's just for me alone right now, not that interesting. You can have multiple projects where you can segment off your customers or different types of things that you would like to segment. That's something that you cannot do in the self-hosted version. So that's why I personally decided for the cloud. And I have a second running on the self-hosting version because I do intend to also run N8N in my customer's environment locally. So my idea is to spin up like a Docker container inside your server, or have like a small package PC to install, and then just run it locally there. And that's something that I can test with the self-hosted version.
The other thing, going to your question of like, how can you test this out or start to learn it quickly? So as you posted, there are learning paths. So they have a couple of structured courses, and then if you want to save yourself from Ansible and all that stuff, just to see if you actually like it, you can technically just download it, run it on a Windows computer locally, which is pretty quick. Download it, click like we tell our users to on the next button, and there you have it. It'll run, and you can do pretty much anything that you want to do on it on a Windows computer, VM, or your local computer, whatever.
Or Mac. It does work on pretty much all the platforms. It's very easy to install.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah. The downside to running it yourself internally is that you don't have as easy access to webhooks, and they do have N8N runs their own tunnel service that they have pretty good instructions for setting up where you can, and they specifically say don't use this for production. It's not really secure fully in anything, but if you do need to do webhooks, which a webhook is where another service out there sends a request to your N8N to initiate an action or to send information to you when something happens, then of course you need to be listening somewhere on the web for them to be able to connect into you and make that webhook call. Your computer hopefully is not normally listening on the public internet for inbound web connections, and so they have a tunnel service that you can use for testing and development to create that sort of thing. The benefit to deploying in the cloud or using their hosted one is that you are usually running on a server that does have that public access that you can accept inbound webhooks for. If you're not doing webhooks and you're just doing outbound, API requests to third-party services, then you can run it on your machine and not deal with webhooks at all. So it really depends on what your goal is in a specific automation to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely wouldn't suggest putting your Windows computer on production with that.
Please don't do that.
If you like it, download it, install it, maybe. But yeah.
If you like it, you should put a VPS on it.
I wanted to bring up a question. Vian said, I'm currently trying to create a credential to connect our Ninja One to N8N, but I still don't get how to do it. Do y'all have any resources or thoughts on how someone might do that?
Sure. I can actually demonstrate how I've done it in my.
Okay.
And here, let me share.
Let's see if that's the same as I got it.
Yeah, let's see. So inside of Ninja, if you go into administration and then apps API, I have this N8N API key that I created with this client ID, and you can see the settings here. Include I'm not sure if you need all of these necessarily. I know this works for me. I'm trying to remember honestly the settings that I used in terms of platform. I'm pretty sure I used this API services machine to machine. Checked all the different areas of the app of Ninja that you can access with that, and then added the refresh token. I believe to at least one of these. There we go. As long as you use client credentials, you do not need a redirect URI. It's not super clear. Exactly, you do not get access to every single API endpoint if you don't add some additional authentication types. And honestly, I still get confused in some of those areas sometimes. And there's some documentation out there and people in Discord that can help with that. But give this a name, hit add, and then copy the client ID and the secret into N8N. And in this particular case, I have under credentials, I have Ninja credentials saved in here where you enter the same client ID. And in N8N, this is actually a credential that was added by the third-party community module that adds this authentication method. So if you go into settings, and this is self-hosted, so you can add community modules without limit. You go into settings and then community nodes, which are the third-party code systems that are added by other people to integrate with other systems that don't come by default. And these are all the ones I have installed on this test box that I have. I created a separate test environment, N8N installation. In this particular case, I'm using this avant-garde module, and I think there's a couple others out there. You basically you copy this and go to install, paste the name in, check the box, hit install, and it shows up here a few seconds later. And I've used some of these other ones as well. They're quite powerful. So once you install the module, the credential becomes an option. So you go to create credential specifically, or when you go to add an endpoint, you can see there's now Ninja One credentials. Go continue, and then fill out the API base URL for your region, the client ID, the secret that you copy over, and then adjust the monitoring scopes if you need to match what your credential has access to. So once you save that and open it up, it now should test automatically. As soon as you go and enter those in, you click save, it tests, and it'll tell you if it succeeded or failed. And then you can go in and use things for that. So for example, I'm using that the credentials here for this tenant, and when I click execute, it's now running. And in these cases, I'm listing the organizations inside the tenant. So the input is nothing because I just click start. It goes out and gets the list of organizations in Ninja and outputs them here for my review in a couple of different ways. And then it passes that information to the list devices endpoint. And in this case, it's just listing all the devices in Ninja regardless of organization, but I could filter it. And then this one is list all the Windows services. And in this case, I'm passing the ID. So the ID that I come inbound, this is the previous call of devices that I just listed. I drag, if I empty this, I can drag the ID field over and be like, oh yeah, I actually want to look at the devices, the Windows services for this device based on the ID number that was returned. I'm going to do a query and pull all the Windows services that are installed on that device inside and documented inside the Ninja system. And you can add additional query parameters like name or, hey, I want to see only running services. So you click execute, and it's now going to only return services where the state is running for the device ID. And it's going to loop through the way that N8N generally runs is it takes all of the inputs, in this case, 2 different devices, and it runs this center query every time once for every returned item. So the first thing it does is it queries all the services for the device with ID 1 that's running, and it lists them over here, and then it goes to 2 and it does the same thing. You can change that. You can say only execute once, so it's only going to do the first one. So now I only have 19 items returned because I only have 19 services on this first thing that was returned. If I turn that back to not execute once, now it's going to return 38 items because there's 38 items total between the two because it executed twice. So just that's a very high level. You can page through the results and see more. You can show more at once. You can view the JSON version of that. You can view the schema, which is the field level, the example of the data from the first item, or you can view a table where you see all of the items with columns. So all of the inputs and outputs in N8N show all these multiple viewpoints that you can review. The edit button lets you can temporarily pin data for testing. So you make the call once, especially with webhooks where you're getting inbound calls and not just executing manually. Sometimes you want to run that over and over again while you're testing, but have the same data of that one call that you started with. If you make that call, you can then pin the data, or you can go to executions and you can copy to editor, which basically takes the data from that run and moves it into your live workflow and pins it. So you can run the same data over and over again and not have to trigger that separately in the third-party system repeatedly, which is a huge win from a rapid testing and deployment. And one of the things I really like about how it is easy to do things in N8N. So one of the UI UI niceties that's there. So that's an example of a specific workflow with Ninja. And then I'll just quickly mention this activity item. If you have scheduled tasks, because you can trigger things on a schedule, you can also listen for webhook calls. Triggering active to on starts listening or starts the schedule. When it's set to inactive, nothing happens with that automatically. So you can choose, like for this one, because it's only ever triggered automatically, active and inactive, it's not even enabled because there's nothing to do automatically. For this particular this one here, this is listening to a webhook call. So I'm actually calling from a Cognito form. When somebody fills it out and clicks the submit button, it sends this the form information into the system here. I've pinned this previous one. That's the pinning data, so it's easy to repeat this over and over again. And then this workflow, I can click execute workflow here to test, and it's running with the pinned data. But when active is enabled, it's also listening on that webhook for additional forms to come in and be processed. If you turn it to inactive, then it's, Cognito Forms can send as many webhooks as it wants, and they won't actually arrive or do anything. It's an easy on-off button for that. In this case, what this workflow does is it runs some code to sort through the inputs from, and I had AI write this code. I did tweak it a little bit, but AI mostly wrote this code, which is just JavaScript to accept the input, reformat it into essentially the ticket body and subject in the formats that I want it to output in, and then go through and find the Autotask client and contact information and create a new ticket with that correct client and contact information with the body of the information from the N8N or in the workflow from the original Cognito form. So that just a very quick and easy, relatively, I did this in under an hour this week. I wrote this workflow. It's not perfect. It could be polished a little bit and needs some more work, but it starts to solve a problem where we were using email for something that really should have been automated.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That seems like there's a lot that you can do in here. Vian did have a follow-up question, and maybe you can kind of help figure that out. But it says that they get an invalid URL, which doesn't make sense because they're using the correct one. Is there a specific one that they need to add?
Yeah, whatever URL shows up when you sign in to your Ninja instance at the top here, this URL up to the .com or the ending here that makes sense. This is what should be put into, at least for this particular the Avant-Garde integration uses this as the base URL, and I don't know if it works with or without the slash at the end. I'm using it without the slash in this case, and then the client ID and secret. So there's not a lot of other stuff here.
Okay.
If you've locked your Ninja instance down to access from only certain IP addresses, which I know some people do for security, then you want to make sure that the IP address that your N8N instance is coming from is allowed in that connection potentially. So that's something else to think about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, hopefully that helps. Using subdomain, do you know if that changes anything?
If you're using, I'm actually not sure if you can use the rmmservice.com subdomains for Ninja One access. Even if you have Ninja One with a custom subdomain, you can still use the ninjarmm.com base for your area. You would still use that for your region, and I would use it for the API personally.
We have a subdomain, but we're using just a normal URL there.
And is that just based on the region that you're in?
Yeah.
URL? Okay.
I'm using the eu.ninjarmm.com.
Yeah, there's EU. App is the primary US one. There's US2. There's CA is Canada. EU for the European Union, and then there's one other that I always forget the name of. But it's published in. I mean, if you look at the PowerShell module that Mikey publishes. He lists that as well. I know if you go into the Ninja One module, I believe in the documentation he has in connection, you can see the scopes listed if I recall. It has been a while. Maybe he's moved that around a little bit. Somewhere in
Do
here,
you know,
it's
do you know
documented.
where they would be able to find that? Which instance?
Isn't it also
they're
documented
in?
on the API docs itself?
It is in the
new
API
one, I
docs,
believe?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure that they are able to find everything that they need, but perfect. All right. I mean, it seems like we have a lot of really good use cases. Kevin or Andreas, do you have any that you're using maybe that?
And yeah, I can show one. This might seem a little silly, but I tried to mock it up and show an example of it because, well, try not to use our live client environment. So
Yes. Yeah, I know that it's a little bit difficult to do to do a live demo of things whenever there's sensitive information. So
yeah, are you able to see? Just confirm you can see a Windows PC and N8.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we had a client. They're in retail. They were moving from one point of sale system to another. We stood up a new server for them for that point of sale system. And so the implementation company that was hired to set that up wanted us to give access to all of the retail staff to log into that server in order to run a batch file that would, update the test data with, do some conversions on their live data in their previous system. And then they also wanted to have access to restart a service. And so we said, no, thank you. We don't want people logging in that are, front of house retail staff people logging into a server. So what we decided to do instead, we used the Ninja system tray. Now I've got this just set up to do printer spooler because I didn't have any special on this demo PC. I don't have any special services running. So we added the system tray option, which was basically restart POS service. And it shows up on all the POS terminal system trays. And when they would run it, what it does is it fires open a webhook. So it's calling the N8N server. And you'll notice that process is stopped over here. And then it's going to wait a few seconds and then it will start again. Sorry, this is the best I could cobble together in about 15 minutes for the meeting.
You're totally fine.
There we go. It's running now.
Yeah.
So what's happening is we called this webhook from the tray, and it's just it's got a webhook URL that's going to give us. We're doing a get on it. Nothing special there. And then we go to Ninja, and I've hard coded the ID of this PC. In the case with our client, we actually hard coded the ID of the server that needed to be restarted. The service needed to be restarted. And so, because you might think like, why are you restarting the print spooler using a sys tray icon and automation and all that on a local computer? Well, we're actually triggering it from other computers at other retail locations. So anyway, we plugged in the ID of the computer. We're telling it that we want to, well, first of all, I want to control the Windows service. So this is a Ninja One node. It's using resource of management. The operation, which there are plenty in here, we're using control Windows service. ID of the computer, so 704. Service ID is just the name of the service, so spooler. And then the action I want to take is I want it to stop. Then my next node is just a wait node, and I told it to wait 2 seconds. I could have restarted the service in that one node, but for the demo purpose, the fact that you could actually see it stop and then run, I interjected this wait timer just so you could actually see that it's stopping it and then it's starting it. So that's all that's happening here. So it just delays for 2 seconds. Then on the next one, same thing, except as the other, except that our action is start. So we have pause, stop, restart, and start. And after that, I have a responding webhook. that basically is just going to respond with text of your spooler service has been restarted. So it's just a message to let the person know what's actually happening. And so that's all it is. And so when you go to executions, you can see that it takes 3.3 seconds to run the entire thing. So when you pull up the execution, it will load the workflow here, and you can actually see the process that it, path that it took. Now, when I'm working on webhooks, I always add in a manual execution. That way I can basically feed it some dummy data and I can trigger it to my heart's content without having to fool around with the webhook. So just
the
way
cool
that-
thing here is you can double click on any of those nodes as well in the execution history and bring up the information that was actually passed in that execution, and then what went out the other side. So that's part of the rapid review and development process here. Is you can easily go back and see what was wrong, what was right, make changes, and then you can actually copy that to the live editor. So if you were like, I'm troubleshooting and I need to rerun this with exactly what happened in this one failed execution, you can click the copy to editor, and it brings the live thing back up with that data that you were messing with, so you can re-execute it.
Yeah, and fortunately here the output's kind of boring. There is no output in this example. But again, I mean, if you from the standpoint of that server, I mean that workstation rather, literally I'm just clicking that. Again, it's launching the webhook, it's running the process, it's responding, and then it's going to stop and then start that process. So it's a way to do some of those things. Now, David alluded to the fact that you can basically select any node or multiple nodes. So, if I wanted to share with him how to do this respond with a webhook, I can just right click and copy, and then pull up my trusty notepad and paste it in, and it gives me the JSON that he can take that and copy it, and then on the clipboard, I mean, you can literally copy that from Discord, right click and say, well, I guess you can't right click, but if you just hit Control V to paste, it will paste that node back in. So
even a whole workflow. So if you select 4 or 5 nodes of the whole thing, you have to drag the mouse around it, but then you can actually copy and paste that whole workflow either into a text editor or back into Node or another workflow.
Yeah. So there's the whole thing.
Don't worry, it's not copying your credentials from
Yeah,
there. The credentials are saved separately, and you'll have to, when you paste it from somebody else, you might have to add your own credentials in each node, for example. So there can be a little bit of work there. It will. I'm not sure if copy and paste does, but I know the workflow itself, if you have any pinned data, it saves that pinned data with the workflow. So you want to be careful. Like, obviously, before you share with somebody else, be careful that you're not sharing stuff that you shouldn't be. But N8N is relatively good at making it easy to do that without sharing the actual data or credentials or things that you don't want to.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's a really great use case. Andreas, I don't know if you have a demo or if you have any kind of.
Well, it's something I've been working on for a while. I'm again a little bit different in terms of what I'm doing with N8N. So this is basically me looking at the NINJA1 webhooks that are available to me, and then inserting webhooks into N8N to actually do something with the information. And I want to basically make sure that all my tickets, in this case is the one that I'm looking at the bottom left here first, I want the tickets being covered by AI agents at some point. So instead of being like fully driven by NINJA1 is where I will receive a ticket through N8N, implemented in NINJA1, but then let the AI agent update the ticket as it goes along and tries to resolve the issue. One of the issues that I wanted to bring up, which Kevin already stole from me, is one of the most annoying issues that come along is rebooting the printer server because the printer got stuck. That's something that happens so many times on help desk that people get a call for that. But instead, if they get a response from the AI agent immediately, like do this, or the AI agent sees what it needs to do and actually acts upon it, that's where, in my opinion, another step in towards automation goes. So here, when the ticket actually gets received, I get the webhook here. I verify all the data, start preparing the data for the AI. It looks very complicated, but it's just step by step, making sure that I gather the right information for the AI agent to do its job. Once I have it actually updated, like, okay, I have found the solution to the problem and I want to execute on it, the AI agent takes that information and then sends, in this case, because it's not fully implemented with my customers yet, sends the response to Discord to me. So I can investigate while I'm getting new tickets in my platform on Discord, like, hey, can the AI agent resolve this next time? And can I get it live on this part? And once the tickets are done for me, I will also go back to alerts and look at proactively device status, where I can log in scripts, where I can do things before I even wake up, where the AI agent already understands I need to run this script to resolve this problem because it's general maintenance, for example. But normally a technician logs in and runs the script. Now the AI agent runs the script. And that's where I want to personally go with N8N and N8N together.
Wow, yeah, that's really, really cool. I think that there are so many awesome use cases for setting up workflows like this. So that's really cool, and hopefully it makes things a little bit easier for you and not as not as time consuming. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right. I think we're pretty much at time, but is there any kind of last minute advice that y'all have about getting started with N8N? No,
Honestly, for me, my advice that I would give is just look at your business, look at what takes up the most time for you, where you're spending the most money to solve the problem. Open up N8N and start working on it to resolve it. And you will figure it out as you go along. And as soon as it's done, you turn around and you look like, oh, it was that easy, because it is that easy. You just have to start with it.
yeah.
12 hours later, like, that was a really easy 12 hours. I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like easy peasy, one coffee, that's it.
I've literally spent overnight time. I've literally stayed up all night working on this because I was, in the flow and making progress. But I did end up with a solution in the end.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And the key is to know your process. If you don't have a process, you can't automate it. So, spend the time, think about the process. Also think about how long is it going to take me to develop this, and how much time does it actually cost us to do it. Some things aren't. I love to automate everything. Some things are not worth automating.
Yeah, so, and think about reusability. How can you make the process generic enough that it can be reused or optimized for more scenarios? Also, security. When you're accepting data from a third-party system and sending it out, especially if you're accepting data, and especially if that's coming from an end user, make sure that you've got some additional security checks to sanitize the data, make sure that it doesn't have any unexpected characters or instructions or things coming in that you don't want to blow up your your system, or that you're not taking actions based on that data that you haven't validated, or they're in a very narrow scope. So, don't accept a random webhook that says delete this user and then just go delete a user somewhere because a webhook got submitted to your form that said that. And make sure that you're validating in multiple ways that that's coming from, a specific IP or a system with a credential or some sort of authenticated request in some way. So be very careful if you can, when you're developing, use read-only API keys. Certain, like, for example, in CIP, the Cyber Drain partner portal for Microsoft, which has an API you can connect to very easily. And I've done some really cool license reporting through there in N8N. I have my API credential for that is read-only. I can make a writable API key if I need to, but so far I'm doing reporting, and I would rather not be able to mess up something in a Microsoft environment for one of my clients because I don't need that access in N8N. So keep that in mind as you scope your API access. I made a quick list of the services that I've connected N8N into and done something with: NetSapiens, Ringotel, SIP, Autotask, NinjaOne, QuickBooks Online, Trello, SentinelOne, Cognitoforms, Pax8, and IT Glue. With the exception that I'm still running into some issues with Pax8 authentication, so that I haven't completed that piece yet. But I have connected and at least gotten data in or out of all of those systems. And some of the things that I have written internally are some client auto pay status updates back and forth, both for some invoicing checks as well as synchronizing with Trello and Autotask status. I've updated. planning on updating counts from third-party tools in Autotask from a billing standpoint and doing some updates there, although I haven't built that piece out. It's a little more complicated. Processed inbound Autotask tickets and adjusted, pulled the company name out of emails and converted them to be assigned to the right company, and done some of the automation that can't be done directly in Autotask because they don't deserve the name Auto. Some license reporting from SIP, Sentinel-1. I've done some decommissioning of agents in Sentinel-1, and then I've done a little bit of AI testing. So those are just some of the high level, in addition to the RingoTel NetSapiens integration. Like, those are things that I have active workflows in most cases doing something on either a schedule or webhook basis today that are in the last 3 months that I've implemented and have been very helpful.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff there. It sounds like you've got a pretty good workflow and everything going. Well, we are at time. Thank y'all so much for joining today. Really appreciate you demoing some ways that you're using N8N. And thanks to everybody that joined in the chat as well for the great questions. And we will see y'all in the next stream. All right. Take
Thank you.
care, y'all.
Bye-bye.